Welcome everyone to the second annual question and answer session with me and my lovely wife Charlene. This is for The Truth About Cancer, a Global Quest. We are overwhelmed, to say the least, at the response thus far to this documentary miniseries. The 9 days was amazing. The number of views that we had on episode 1 surpassed the total number of views that we had on episode 1 from last year's Quest for the Cures Continues. In a full year, that one episode doesn't have as many as episode 1 from A Global Quest in just about a week and a half. It's really amazing the amount of views that we've gotten, the positive responses that we've gotten, and we're really thankful to you for doing this for us, because we made this for you, and it's really rewarding for us to see that you're watching it and you're enjoying it and you're learning from it. And that's really the most important thing to us, isn't it?
It sure is. And I just wanted to say that we are reading your comments. A lot of them are coming through Facebook, and you're tweeting us, you're emailing us, and we are reading them. We're doing the best we can to answer your questions, and right now that's what we're here for. So, you want to get started?
Yeah, the Q&A session, second annual Q&A, here we go. Now, these, if you saw them last year, they may have been a little bit more organized. We've been just flooded this year, so I haven't even had a chance to really review all of the questions. These are, what we did, as you know, is each episode you got a chance to enter a question about that episode or a series of questions. So these are taken from all 9 episodes, and these are either the most popular questions, which most of them are the most frequently asked, and then some of them are just the most important questions that maybe only a few people asked, but I thought it was important to answer them. And so that's what these comprise. They're in no particular order, and so we're just going to run through them. I hope I know the answers.
I think he does. We'll see. Well, let's see, Ty. It comes from Lisa in Florida. Hi, Lisa. She asks, what can someone who has already gone through chemo treatment protocols and been cured do to stay healthy, minimize the long-term effects of chemo, and prevent reoccurrence of cancer?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lisa, and it's a very frequent question. You're one of many that had that question about what you can do if you've already gone through the big 3. And that's a really important question, because there are so many out there that have gone through these conventional treatments that didn't know at the time they went through that they were toxic. They didn't realize they were going to have these side effects. So a lot of things that you can do. What you want to do at this point, if you've gone through the conventional treatments, the big 3, or if you're currently undergoing them, is you've got to get your immune system back up to par, because those treatments compromise the immune system. And so your immune system's low, we got to get it back up. And so there's a lot of different substances that we can use to do that. As Dr. Russell Blaylock mentioned, Dr. David Jockers, Dr. Nalini Chilkov, I think were the 3, and also Sayer G. These 4 all mentioned, if you remember, the same group of herbs, and they all have different actions, and they work in a multitude of different ways against cancer. Quercetin from onions, turmeric, you've heard of curry, turmeric, curcumin, resveratrol, ellagic acid, green tea. All of these things are substances that build the immune system. They also have specific properties that kill cancer cells. They also affect cancer stem cells. They also help cancer from spreading. So this is like a gold mine of substances that you can use to stop cancer from coming back and build your immune system at the same time. So the number one goal, beta-1,3-D glucan, we take every day. That's something that you can use. I hear that Doc Newsom, who's a favorite in this series, is coming out with a new immune product made from medicinal mushrooms. He's calling it 7M. That's coming out. So there's a lot of different things that you can use to boost that immune system and to get your body back to health after you've already undergone the big 3. And not only that, as Dr. Russell Blaylock mentioned, these substances actually help chemotherapy become more targeted. So I think he said in the series, it's less like a shotgun and more like a rifle, right? So it targets the cancer cells better. Chemotherapy does when you use these substances. Specifically, I think he was talking about curcumin or turmeric. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And so the main thing is the immune system. You got to get the immune system up while you're undergoing it or after chemotherapy to stop the cancer from coming back.
The next question comes from Ali in Pakistan. She asks, what is the name of the clinic in Mexico where the woman with pancreatic cancer went to for her cancer cure?
That would be the Biomedical Center in Tijuana, Mexico. Her name was Pam Kelsey, and if you remember, Pam was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer over 40 years ago. And to my knowledge, she's the longest surviving pancreatic cancer patient in the world. I don't know anybody else that's lived over 40 years since being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So Pam went to the Biomedical Center, Tijuana, Mexico. And one of the things I mentioned in the documentary is that that's where we wanted to take my dad when he got sick. But unfortunately, he died before we could get him there. But at that time, it was called the Hoxsey Clinic. And now it's called the Biomedical Center. And if you remember, Liz Jonas in her interview said they tried to get away from the name Hoxsey Clinic because Harry had been arrested so many times, had been persecuted for, practicing quackery, being, prescribing drugs without a license, whatever. They made up all kinds of charges. He was thrown in jail over 100 times. So they tried to get away from the Hoxsey name. But the patients keep calling it the Hoxsey Clinic. I still call it the Hoxsey Clinic. But that's where it is in Tijuana.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, the next question comes in from Jennifer in Montreal. She asks this: my children are interested in the medical field, but where can they go to be educated about different therapies and protocols where prescribing drugs isn't the priority?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer. If they go to a traditional medical school, in the United States at least, and most all around the world, they're going to get drug-intensive medicine. As we learned in episode 1, 100 years ago, the medical schools were co-opted by the drug companies. And so they're going to get drug-intensive treatment teaching in the medical schools if they're traditional. But that's not the only medical schools that are available today. People don't know that you can go to naturopathic medical schools, you can go to homeopathic medical schools. And you're not going to get an MD degree, a medical doctor degree, but you can be educated in homeopathy and naturopathy. You can go become a chiropractor. Actually, chiropractors know, my experience, most chiropractors know more about the way the body works and about staying healthy and getting healthy than most medical doctors do, because they learn an integrative, a holistic approach when they're in chiropractic school. So those are all disciplines that you could go to school for and learn, as opposed to just getting your typical medical doctor degree, which if it's at a medical school in the United States, you get that MD degree, all you will have learned is, as Dr. Irvin Sani said, you're going to learn how to prescribe drugs. You're going to learn how to prescribe drugs to treat symptoms. But as we know, after watching these 9 days, drugs are not curative. They may mask symptoms, but the reason that you're sick is not because you're short on drugs. You're not deficient in whatever drug the pharmaceutical companies are selling. You're sick because there's something else wrong with the body. The only thing that these drugs can do is mask symptoms, but they're not going to ever cure.
Well, the next question comes in from Gilda in Florida. She asks this: my mom died of cervical cancer. Some people, particularly insurance companies, assure me I am doomed to have cervical cancer too. But my lifestyle is 1,000 times healthier than my mother's. Is it true that I will develop it at the same time in my life? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gilda, and I'm glad you asked that, because you brought up the subject of epigenetics here. And one of the focuses of this documentary over the last 9 days was trying to educate about what is epigenetics, what is the science of epigenetics. What epigenetics says is that there are certain lifestyle choices that you can make that will override your genetic expression, simply put. And so that's a great question. My mom died of breast cancer, my mom died of cervical cancer, Dad died of prostate cancer, whatever it might be. Am I doomed to that because I have that same genetic expression? And the answer is no, you're not, because of epigenetics. If you remember, in episode 9, we interviewed Chris Peterson. Now, Chris Peterson actually had one of the few types of cancers that is really genetically related, and she still overcame it through epigenetics, through lifestyle choices, through dietary choices. So, no, you're not doomed to get whatever kind of cancer your parents had, and yes, there are choices that you can make to override that genetic expression so that you never have to worry about cancer, even if your mom or dad died from cancer. I mean, my parents both died from cancer. I don't worry about, they both had stomach cancer. I don't worry about dying from stomach cancer because I have some stomach cancer gene, because the lifestyle choices that I'm making, at least I think and hope and pray, are overriding any kind of genetic propensity that I might have for stomach cancer. So no, you don't need to be worried about that, but that's a great question from Gilda.
And I just want to add this to that, what you just said, Ty. In all honesty, when his mother and father died, especially when his father died, because that was the first one back, how many years has that been?
Almost 20
19,
years.
Yeah, 20 years. Ty did have fear. And the reason that he had fear was because he was believing the same thing that everybody out around the world is believing, that well, if mom and dad died, so will I. It's all fear, but now that we've been educated, we're fearless. We don't fear cancer. Just like I think that one of my favorite quotes from the first quest was from Webster Kerr. I loved what he said when Ty asked him, Webster, if you got cancer, what would you do? How would you treat it? And he just got this big smile on his face and he said, ooh, I'd be so excited because then I could experiment on myself. And you see, Webster Kerr has helped so many people around the world treat and beat their cancer with these really powerful non-toxic protocols. So he knows it works. And we know too, because we've heard from thousands of people around the world. So because of our education now, researching information, we're fearless.
Yeah.
Ty knows what to do and he's doing it. And he's helping you to do it too.
And if you enjoy what we're doing, please click the like button here on Facebook. Share it with your friends and your family on any kind of social media. We ask for your help because without you, we couldn't do what we're doing. It would be a band of just a few. But with you, it's a band of tens of millions. So we're asking for your help to share this message. And if you've benefited from the Global Quest these last 9 days, if you've learned from it, if you feel like it's information that would benefit somebody that has cancer, or if you have cancer, please share this on all the social medias and click the social media buttons below and help to spread this message. And we appreciate you doing that.
The next question comes from Nick in the UK. Hi, Nick. He asks, how do you stay out of jail and keep your family together if you choose not to do chemotherapy and radiation? Very good question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And that's a very pertinent question. As you've seen, if you watch these last few episodes, we've seen many instances of children that have been forced to do chemotherapy and radiation against their parents' wishes. And so your question's a good one because it's very applicable to many people out there right now that may be dealing with this. As a matter of fact, we have received numerous emails since we began to air the Global Quest here from parents that are in that very situation, that they are in a situation that they do not want their children to undergo the chemo and the radiation, but they're already in the custody, so to speak, of the state. And that's the reality of it, is that the kids are the wards of the state in most of the United States. When they're a minor, you sign them over to that hospital, they get a chance to choose what treatment that kid does instead of you. That's what actually happens when you take them to the hospital. When you take them to begin these treatments, they are going to decide for you what treatment is best. And so what's the best, what's the actual question? How do you stay out of jail? Well, you have three options, basically. You can do exactly what they say. They won't take you to jail for that. You can submit the kids to the treatment and then pray that they come through it okay. Now, your second option is you can do what they say, submit the kids to the conventional treatments, but you can also do like Todd Jones did and supplement what your child is getting. In other words, you can maybe try to sneak in some vitamins, herbs, minerals, anything that you can to help that immune system stay up while they're undergoing chemotherapy. And then the third option is you just say no, we're not going to do it, at which point they're probably going to try to take your kids. CPS is going to take your kids, or try to. And so then you're at the option, what do I do? Do I go to another state? Do I leave the country? We're not recommending anything at this point. We can't do that, but that's your third option, is that you say, no, I'm not going to do these, but then they will try to come take your kids, most likely. And so at that point, you got to figure out, what do I do? Where do I go? What's my plan of attack? And at that point, that'll have to be your decision. But that's really the only three options at this point.
There was a girl, Sarah, what was her name?
Sarah Hirschberger was an Amish little girl that had cancer a couple years ago. And they wanted to force her to do chemo, and they took off.
They left, I believe, to Mexico, and they've been gone for 2 years, just came back, and she's cancer-free. She treated it with all natural substances, and now the family, they're just untouchable because she's without cancer, so she proved that those treatments that she wanted to do that they did not want her to do really work. But that's what she chose. That's what her family chose to do. Yeah, and that's pretty exciting, too, that she left the country and used some of these non-toxic therapies, and now she's back, and I think they're back now, right? They are.
Yeah, and she's cancer-free. So it's very encouraging. We're seeing these stories happen all the time, and so it's nice to see stories like that. So that is an option, but it's not that it's not without risk, because there was a time where they were looking for them, and if they had found them, they probably would have took her, and they may have thrown the parents in jail. I don't know what would have happened, but isn't it absurd, though, that we have to even have this conversation, that you might be thrown in jail if you decide to treat your child's disease in a way that is opposite to what the authorities say that you should. So it's just really bizarre to me that we even have to have this conversation.
It just doesn't make sense. Todd said that he looked up the statute in Alaska, and it gave the parents the right to choose the medical treatment. So the establishment there, as well as all over, they're just not abiding by that statute. They're making their own unwritten laws that they're forcing us to adhere to. And the bottom line is this: God's law is higher than man's law. And that's not even a law, according to Todd. So it's just...
Well, what Todd said is that the statute doesn't matter. That's what,
Right.
specifically what he said. The Alaska statute says that the parent has the choice, but the statute doesn't matter because the out-of-control government doesn't follow the rules anymore. And that's the problem, especially when we're dealing with cancer treatment.
The next question comes from Felipe in Mexico City. He asks, can we get the recipe for Enoch's kick 'em juice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Enoch DeBoos was the man that you saw in episode 9 that was diagnosed with supposedly terminal skin cancer, and he said he just felt like that wasn't the treatment for him, to go into chemo and to have surgery and all this. So he said that he just prayed and God gave him kick 'em juice, right? So we were there in Atlanta, the camera team and I, and we got a chance to taste it, and it's pretty hot. He said what he put in it was garlic, ginger, and a whole bunch of different hot peppers, habaneros, jalapenos, Tabasco peppers, you name it, and just let it sit for a long time. I don't know if he blended it up or whatever, how he did it, but I think he just let it sit. He cut them up and let it sit overnight, and it became like this concentrated hot liquid, and then he would kind of water it down. He would add it to distilled water, and I think he put maybe a little bit of lemon, maybe a little bit of honey in it because it was had a little bit of sweetness, and then he just drank that all the time. And over the course of a month or two, his skin cancer went into total remission. He's never had any issues since then, and I think that was 4 years ago. So that's the kick 'em juice. And the hot peppers are not only good; they not only have anti-cancer properties, which means that they'll target cancer cells. They'll cause cancer cells to commit suicide, apoptosis. I know that the hot peppers also help to stop the spreading of cancer, but they're also really good for people that have heart issues. And hot peppers can actually stop a heart attack in its tracks.
Okay, our next question comes from Les from Spain. Hi, Les. He asks, why can't you put these presentations in transcript form for the deaf? We need this information also.
Well, that's a great question, Les, and we actually have here. This is, we just got this. This is literally hot off the press. And this is the big book, the 131 episode or expert transcripts. So we interviewed 131 experts for the Global Quest, and this is a transcript of those full-length interviews. As you can see, it's really big. Believe it or not, this is about as big as they will print a book. They don't have printing presses to print them any bigger. It would have had to go into 2 books. So it's really heavy too. I don't know, it's a couple pounds, maybe 3 pounds. You could literally work out with it. But we do have the transcripts here, and this is all part of the gold package. So we can't do this without you. And so I really hope that you'll consider owning either the silver package or the gold package today. And let me tell you a little bit about the differences. The silver package is the 9 episodes plus the 9 episode transcript book. The gold package is the 9 episodes plus the 9 episode transcript book plus the all 131 full-length interviews plus this big book here. Plus I think you get the MP3 files as well with both. So the sound files as well. So this is our mission, to educate, expose, and eradicate cancer once and for all. We couldn't do it without you. So I hope that you'll consider owning one of the 2 packages today, the gold or the silver pack, fully covered by a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't like what you see or what you hear, what you view, you can send it back, no problem, no questions asked. We'll give you your full money back. But together we can team up to help eradicate cancer, and the way that we do it is through owning the gold or the silver. That's why you can be part of this with us, and we couldn't do what we do without you, to be honest. We'll get to some questions later that'll deal with that, and so I don't want to kill someone's thunder. Somebody asked a specific question about how do we do this, and so I'll get to that later. But the bottom line is we do it together with you, and so we really appreciate all the support that we've got with you. Again, I would implore you to own either the gold or the silver pack today, and then you get this big book you can work out with.
Well, Ty, we just found something thanks to Travis today, the closed caption option. We have had so many questions from you all out there, and believe me, that has been our desire from the very beginning, to close caption everything, but we have good news. You want to tell them?
Well, yeah, there's on YouTube. There's a little button you can click. It's the CC button, and it will close caption every YouTube video for you. So if you're hearing impaired, you can click that button, and then you'll have the words up on the screen for you.
So YouTube is already looking out for you. Okay, the next question comes from Maggie in Ireland. She asks, can you explain about the IND process with Dr. Brzezinski's clinic? Why are children dying because of this?
The IND is an investigative new drug application. It's what has to be filled out in order to use a drug that's not been officially approved by the FDA, and that's what's going on with Dr. Brzezinski's anti-neoplaston treatment in Houston. And as you saw in one of the episodes of Global Quest, Dr. Labat, who's been learning from Dr. Brzezinski, he described the story of how he's gone through this IND application process several times, and the FDA always puts it on hold. And he was just so frustrated and really sad about the whole scenario. And I remember as we interviewed him in Seattle, the guy's just completely genuine. He just loves these kids, and the kids are dying because they don't have access to these anti-neoplaston treatment from Dr. Brzezinski because the FDA keeps putting the IND application on hold. And the reason, if you remember in the episode, just blew me away, is that the risks outweigh the benefits. So the risk is death. So how does that outweigh the potential benefits? I mean, you can't get any worse than death. And so if these kids have no other option than to die, I mean, let's say this is not the case, but let's say that the anti-neoplastons gave them a stomach ache. That's a side effect. How is that worse than the kid dying? But the FDA says, no, the risks of the treatment are much too great for that kid. The kid's going to die. But the kids are not getting access to this because of the FDA, which is basically playing a bunch of bureaucratic games, putting these applications on hold. And I don't think we shared this in the quest, but in a global quest, but I remember him telling me that over the last couple of years, the FDA has gotten 2,300 IND applications, and they've only put on hold or rejected 2, and both were from Dr. Gaston and Dr. Brzezinski for using this anti-neoplaston treatment.
The next question comes in from Nick in Australia. Hi, Nick. He asks, I would like more clarification on Nuremberg trials, big pharma, chemo, and the cancer industry. I didn't quite grasp it all.
Well, Nick, you weren't the only one. A lot of people got part of that. That was the first episode. And that's why we tried to lay the foundation for everything that followed after episode 1, so you could understand these nefarious connections between pharmaceutical companies, the Nazi Party in Nazi Germany. We even mentioned Operation Paperclip, where some of the scientists were brought over to run Big Pharma here in the United States. The cancer industry, they're all connected in a way. And what Dr. Matthias Rath shared with us in episode 1 was that the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, Auschwitz, Dachau, Birkenau, to name 3 of them, were actually built by pharmaceutical companies. At that time, IG Farben, which was Bayer, Hecht, and BASF, which was the 3 biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, they formed a company which they called Interessengemeinschaft Farben. And now in German, Interessengemeinschaft means cartel. So they actually, in their own name, they said this is a cartel of drug companies. And that was the name of these 3 companies. They came together and they built these concentration camps, not with the purpose initially of killing the Jews and other people that were killed in the concentration camps. The purpose was that was where they would house the slave labor that they would use to build their facility and then work in their facility to manufacture drugs and rubber and plastics and all these other things that they manufactured. It was only after about a year when I think it was the Wannsee Declaration by the Nazis that when they went to get the Jews and put them in the camps and kill them, it was only at that point that they decided, hey, these concentration camps are already here. We're already killing people, because people would be worked to death. The slaves would be worked to death, and then they would burn them up in the incinerators. This was before the Jews were even targeted, and they said, hey, this apparatus is already in place. We might as well, now that we've got this declaration from Hitler that we're going to try to exterminate the Jews, this is a perfect place to do it. That's the connection, and the connection goes further than that, because these pharmaceutical companies are the same pharmaceutical companies now that are manufacturing these toxic drugs that are actually killing cancer patients rather than healing them. And one of the most telling quotes I thought in the whole series was Dr. Matthias Rath that looked at the camera and he said, they've done it once, why won't they do it again? Right? They've done this once, they've exterminated whole races of people. Why do we think that Big Pharma has our best interest in mind. The fact of the matter is, the only interest they have is making money. And again, we're not condemning the people that work for the pharmaceutical companies. We're talking at the high levels.
You know, Ty, I just want to add to that explanation. It's a very good explanation. These are things that we didn't know. When Ty's father got cancer, we just did not know this. And when we learned by researching, especially when 8 years later Mom died in 2004, that lit the big fire. We needed to get the book, Cancer Step Outside the Box, out into the world, because our desire was always, we need to help people. We need to help them not to have to suffer without this information. So the book came onto the scene, and our desire, even back then, was to reach you. We wanted to reach everybody. We wanted every man, woman, boy, and girl to know what we learned, so that you don't lose your children, because we don't want you to lose your parents like we had to, or grandparents, without this information. Knowledge is power. God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. But the truth will set you free. And that's why we put this whole series together for you, so that you could learn that cancer does not have to be a death sentence. And we want you to click the button below, and we want you to join us and own your own copy, so that you can watch it again and again. And in doing so, you're going to support this mission that we're on. You join the TTAC team, the Truth About Cancer team, that is getting these life-saving truths to the end of the earth and back again. It's our joy to do this. It's so encouraging to meet people all over the world now that say, I'm alive today because I watched The Quest for the Cures. So click the button, and don't only get one for yourself, but for your friends and family, the ones you love. And one day, this is not the reason that they're able to do, the drug companies are able to do this, is because people just don't know. But they're waking up. Thanks to you joining us, so thank you. The next question comes in from Johnny Mack in Dayton, Ohio. Hi, Johnny Mack. I'm from Ohio, too. I like that state. And Johnny asks this. My wife said the Stark Law prevents kickbacks from doctors. Is she right?
Yeah, great question, Johnny Mack. I think that your wife's talking about the law that prohibits hospitals from paying doctors to refer patients to them. That's actually what the Stark Law says. It deals mostly with Medicare and Medicaid, but it prevents doctors from getting kickbacks for sending patients to hospitals. Dr. Pai actually mentioned in that episode that oncologists can get reimbursements for prescribing chemo. Now, you and I call that a kickback, but in the medical world, they call it a reimbursement. But this is the only field of medicine where they're able to get reimbursements, or better known as kickbacks, for prescribing drugs. It seems unethical to me that they could benefit with the kickback or reimbursement for prescribing a drug to a patient that they're treating because they have a vested interest to prescribe that drug. It's like, how unbiased are they going to be in prescribing these drugs when there's one that they get a kickback on and there's another over here that they don't? Well, they're going to prescribe the one they get the money for typically. And that's what's going on with chemotherapy today.
Eduardo in Spain, he asks, is cancer a fungus? Some doctors think it is, but stem cell cancer inside the body seems to be something other than fungi. Could you please clarify this?
Yeah, great question, Eduardo, from Spain. Dr. Tullio Simicini, who we did interview for the Quest for the Cures, he believes that cancer is a fungus. I think he's the only doctor that we interviewed that has that position. I don't know that anybody else that we interviewed believes that. I personally don't believe that cancer is a fungus. I do believe that cancer and fungus have a lot of similar properties, and a lot of times fungal infection may be misdiagnosed as cancer and vice versa. But they have the similar property that they both feed on glucose, which is sugar. They both compromise the immune system and so forth. But as far as cancer being an actual fungus, I have not seen enough research to make me believe that cancer is actually a fungus. But I do believe that a lot of the treatments that work for fungal infections do work for cancer. So a lot of times I think maybe people are being treated for a fungal infection, the cancer goes away, or maybe they're being treated for cancer and a fungal infection goes away. And the reason is that they're very similar. I don't think they're the same thing, but I think a lot of times maybe they're mistaken because they are very similar in the fact that they have anaerobic metabolism, and they're very similar in the fact that they're affected by the same types of treatments that would cause both a fungal infection and cancer to go away.
The next question comes in from Judy in Kalamazoo, Michigan. She asks, have you ever read Dr. Mary's Monkey by Edward T. Haslam? I am of the opinion that our own government has been instrumental in the continuance of certain cancers. I am also suspecting that we are seeing more cancer among baby boomers thanks to the SV40 polio vaccine.
Yeah, great question. I'm very familiar with the book. I've read Dr. Mary's Monkey. A brief synopsis of the book is that Dr. Mary Sherman was a scientist in New Orleans about the time that JFK was killed. She was working on this device called a linear particle accelerator. She was also working with with monkeys. That's why Dr. Mary's Monkey. She was working with monkeys, was specifically figuring out how to give them cancer quickly, using them as test subjects and working on a cancer virus. And the theory is that they were working with the U.S. government to try to kill Castro with a remotely targeted cancer virus. That's the synopsis. She was found dead. Half her body was torn off. There's theories that she got the linear particle accelerator, that there was a malfunction and it tore half her body off. I don't really know what happened, and I don't know that anybody will ever know for sure what happened. But the bottom line is that was a cancer virus that the United States government was admittedly now they were producing to try to kill Castro. An interesting thing about Dr. Mary's Monkey, one of the interns that was working with her is a lady named Judith Very Baker. And I met Judith 3 years ago in Dallas when I spoke at the JFK 50-year anniversary. Judith was the girlfriend of Lee Harvey Oswald. And so it was really interesting to speak to her, but she was one of the really smart scientists that was working with Dr. Mary on this team of scientists that were trying to develop a cancer virus to kill Castro. That's what the book's about. Now, the last question, I'm suspecting that we're seeing more cancer in baby boomers due to the SV40 polio vaccine. Well, you're right. It's not just a suspicion. That's been proven now. There's an article in the 2002 Lancet, British medical journal Lancet, that indicated that over half of the 100,000 cases of non-Hodgkin lymphoma could be, I think that was looking at a 10-year span, but I'm not sure the time period, but 100,000 cases at that period, they could attribute back to the simian virus 40, which was monkeypox, that was in the polio vaccine. The polio vaccine back in the late 50s was laced with SV40, and it actually caused half of the cases of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is published in a very reputable medical journal, so your intuition was right.
The next question comes in from Susan in the USA. Please tell us how Selena Matthews is doing.
Yeah, Selena's doing well. If you remember Jay Matthews from episode number, I think it was episode 1 that we had Jay in, he shared the heartbreaking story of his daughter Selena that had osteosarcoma, bone cancer, and they took her from him, took custody of her. This is in Chicago at Rush Hospital, forced chemo, radiation on her, and she lost her arm. So I think she's doing well now. I've seen pictures of her. She looks happy, but she's missing an arm, sadly, and it's just really sad that this little girl will go through life without an arm. She does have a prosthetic now, and so she's learning to use that. Jay said that one of the hardest things was getting her to learn how to use her prosthetic, because every time that she used the prosthetic, it reminds her that she's missing her arm. But I think she's doing well, as well as can be expected.
The next question comes in from Trevor in South Africa. The question is this: was there anything suspicious in the death of Dr. Gonzalez? What happened to his practice?
Yeah, great question, Trevor. There's a lot of theory going out there on the internet about all these doctors that have died, because many natural practitioners have died or been killed or committed suicide in a really short window of time. To me personally, it seems fishy that Dr. Gonzalez, who was a picture of health, that didn't have any kind of physical issues that we knew of, his wife, Mary Beth, said he had no physical issues at all. He was in perfect health, that he all of a sudden dies of a heart attack, which is a very easy way to kill someone if you're going to kill them and not be traceable. So personally, that's my suspicion. I don't have any proof of it. So it's just my suspicion. We don't have any proof that he was killed, and we never will. The bottom line is, because they've not done an autopsy. They've not shown anything. Well, they have done an autopsy, but they didn't prove anything in the autopsy. And so anything that we think is just conjecture, I think that there's something fishy about it. I think that there's more than just coincidence that many alternative doctors have died in a short period of time. But I can't prove it, and nobody will ever be able to prove it. It's just my theory.
Dr. Gonzalez also, on the official website, his family is questioning. They're saying it wasn't a heart attack, that they are suspicious, and they were doing an autopsy to find out what really happened.
But it didn't prove anything in the autopsy. But yeah, his own family is very suspicious about it as well. So it's at this point, it's just a he said, she said. Well, unfortunately, we'll never know. But it does seem odd that a man that was in perfect health, so we thought, dies of a heart attack, and dies at a time where many other doctors have either been killed or died or committed suicide. So it is strange.
And even the suicides are a little bit fishy. They're found out in the woods.
Yeah.
And it's just odd.
Yeah, a lot of weirdness.
And also, what happened to his practice?
His practice in New York City is still there. Dr. Linda Isaacs is running the practice now. So she's still there. She's still using the same pancreatic enzyme protocol, the metabolic protocol that they learned from Dr. William Donald Kelly. So it's still going on. Still a great treatment.
The next question comes in from Martin in Norway, asking this: how can we beat the system when everything is so rigged? I felt very saddened after this powerful information, episode 1. There doesn't seem to be a way out to do just natural things.
Yeah, that's a great question for Martin. The system is rigged. So, how can we beat the system? The way that we beat the system, the way that we are planning to beat the system is through educating. We're going to empower people with knowledge. We're going to educate the world on cancer. And that's the way we beat the system. Because the system is run, the fuel for the system is money. And so as people are educated about these natural treatments for cancer, and as they're educated about the fact that these conventional treatments aren't working, they're going to withdraw their participation in the system. They're going to stop doing these things that are killing them and start looking into doing these treatments that will actually heal them. And so the way that we plan on beating the system it is rigged, through educating the masses. And we can't educate the masses without your help. And that's why it's so important for you to support us, and that we ask you to choose to own either the gold or the silver packs today. And that's what allows us to keep on our life's mission to eradicate cancer once and for all. And the way that we do it is through educating and exposing. And I really think that episode 1 was a really, I don't want to brag, but I think it was a really well done job at educating and exposing the underbelly of this cancer industry. And it really doesn't make sense, a lot of these other things that are going on today with cancer treatments, unless you understand the underbelly of that beast and you learn about it. And so episode 1, that's why I was so proud of episode 1, and not in a prideful way, but in an exciting way, because I really believe that we communicated the underbelly of the beast well, and we were able to educate you on why things are the way that they are. And so the way that we can do this is through your support. And so we just ask you to choose to own either the gold or the silver packs. Full 90-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like it, call our friendly customer service reps and you'll get all your money back, no questions asked. And remember, if you choose to own the gold, you get this big book here that you can work out with, along with all of the episodes, all of the full-length DVDs, the smaller book that's the transcript of the 9 episodes, and all the MP3 files, all in that gold package. So we just thank you. If you've already chosen to own one of these, we appreciate you. We appreciate your support. And if you haven't, we ask that you do that to help us to continue this mission of ours to eradicate cancer once and for all.
The next question comes in from Bina in Pakistan.
Bina in Pakistan, great.
She says, I know I am supposed to get regular mammograms, but aren't the rays harmful?
Yeah, the recommendation, now interesting for mammograms, we dealt with mammograms in episode 2. Mammograms actually do cause cancer. They're ionizing radiation. We dealt with the fact that mammograms often result in many false positives or overdiagnosis of cancer. But about 3 days after episode 2 aired, the American Cancer Society changed their recommendations from the age of 40 to 45 for women to get mammograms. Now, I don't think it had anything to do with us, but it's just interesting that 3 or 4 days after we aired that, the ACS actually changed and said, yeah, you don't get them till 45, and it's not as frequent as they had recommended either. So why would they do that? Because they're dangerous. I mean, if it was a completely benign test, why would they say don't do it? Well, because the reason they say that you shouldn't do it is because it is harmful, and they know that it causes cancer. So yeah, the x-rays are harmful. There are better ways to detect breast cancer. There are better ways to diagnose breast cancer. Thermograms we dealt with in episode 2 is probably the best way outside of mammograms. Mammograms do not diagnose breast cancer early. They actually take 5-6 years later than a thermogram would. But that's what's covered by insurance, and that's what is touted as the early detection is your best protection in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which we're undergoing right now. And, this is just totally off the cuff here, but every time I'm watching sports or whatever, and you got the athletes that are wearing the pink socks and the pink towels and everything, I feel sorry for them because they're so misled, and they think that people want to help. People want to cure cancer. They don't realize that we have the answers right here. But these professional athletes that are out there, and their mom died of cancer, their grandmom died of cancer, their mom's dying of cancer, whatever. They're wearing these pink things. They want to help, but they don't realize that contributing to those organizations is just perpetuating this cancer industry that is always just that far from a cure, but they never quite get it. They're dangling the carrot just to keep getting more money and money into their coffers.
Well, the next question comes in from Carmen in Nicaragua. She asks, can't lawyers use the women have the right to choose argument for their children's rights to no chemo?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The problem is that it's a double standard. It's kind of like Todd Jones said, the Alaska statute says this, but the statute doesn't matter. Well, it's a double standard because let's look at Cassandra Callender, we interviewed earlier. She's the young lady from Connecticut that was forced to do chemotherapy. A horrible, horrible experience for her, being strapped to a gurney and forced chemotherapy against her will. But she was, at the time, 17 years old. Now, she could have gotten an abortion without her parents' consent at that point. But she couldn't choose what treatment she wanted for her own body for cancer. So it's really a double standard. Should they be able to use that argument? Well, yeah, it should be the child's right to choose what goes in their own body, or the child coupled with the parents' rights. But the reality is that doesn't matter, because when the child is admitted to the hospital or to the doctor, the child, until the age of majority, which is 18 in most states, is a ward of the state.
The next question comes in from Rebecca in California. She asks, I want to know what you have unearthed about the link between vaccines and cancer. We are seriously concerned about this, especially as the state government in California has now decided to deny admittance to all children to any school, public or private, including daycare, whose parents conscientiously choose not to vaccinate. Children in California have now lost their First Amendment right to be free, to a free and public education, as well as their First Amendment right to decline any medical treatment. It doesn't take much imagination to foresee a day when parents are being arrested and losing custody of their children if they do not comply with vaccine protocol, which, as we know, is driven by the very same pharmaceutical industry that you exposed in episode 1.
That's a great question. It's the longest question we had too, by the way. But yeah, it's a great question, Rebecca, because that is the reality in California. SB 277 is passed, forced vaccinations in California. And so if you are in public school, and I'm not even sure, I think private school now too, the only thing that's exempt now is homeschool, and they're working on that, trying to get even homeschoolers vaccinated. But the reality is that it should be your First Amendment right to refuse any kind of a medical treatment, but in reality it's not. There are many vaccines that contain ingredients that are either known or potential carcinogens. Anytime that we have a vaccine that contains formaldehyde in it, which many of them do, that's a known carcinogen. It's not like maybe that causes cancer. It's a known carcinogen. We know that formaldehyde causes cancer, but it's in many vaccines. There are also other ingredients such as mercury, aluminum, that have been linked to cancer, and they're not known carcinogens, but they're probable carcinogens. So we have all these ingredients in many vaccines that have an effect on the immune system, that have an effect on the brain, and that have been linked to cancer. So the question then becomes, how can the government force a child or an adult to be injected with a vaccine that causes ingredients that are either known to cause cancer or probably cause cancer? That's the question that's at hand with all these forced vaccines. I don't really have an answer for it. I can't even believe that this is happening in our country. And the reason that this is relevant is because what happens in California generally trickles out to the other states and eventually across the globe. And so this is not just a California issue. I think this is eventually going to be a global issue where we may all face a knock at the door one day that says, here's your vaccine, and if you don't take it, you're going to jail. And so that is the slippery slope that we're on now, which is why it's so important for us to stand up for our health freedom, for our medical freedom, and say no to this tyranny. That's not the government's job to force any kind of a medical treatment or experiment on any of the citizens of the country.
Everyone out there, if you are enjoying what you're hearing and what you're seeing, you've watched the episodes, and we've heard from so many of you that, oh, I can't believe it's over. Well, it's not over. We're just beginning. And you know what? We post on Facebook every day. So we just ask everybody watching us out there to just click the link below to like us on Facebook, The Truth About Cancer, and tell your friends to do the same thing. Invite everybody to like us, because we have so much more information, all of the latest up-to-date information. We read your comments, we comment back, and we appreciate your participation in this global community. We are bringing the truth together to the world, and that's one way you can help us, by liking our page, getting your friends to like it, participate, and share our posts so that people can learn the truth that will set them free.
And like us because we like you.
Exactly. Heidi in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, asks, is there any possibility that this review would be translated into the Spanish language, as we are a huge community that do not properly understand commentaries, the commentaries?
Okay. Yes, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, we do have plans in the works to translate next year. We're going to be getting this translated into Spanish. That is one of the plans, and maybe other languages. We know there's a huge number of people worldwide that don't speak English. We do speak English, so that's the first language that we did it in, because that's what we speak in. But we know there's a huge need for this information to be dispersed in other languages. So yes, we do have plans to translate in 2016 into at least Spanish and maybe more languages. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, next question.
All right. This one comes from Tracy in Folkestone, UK. She asks, my daughter is told she needs to have the cancer injection at school that's supposed to stop cervical cancer. She is 13 years old. What do you think about this?
Well, if you remember in, I think it was episode 5 that we dealt with vaccines, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny dealt with this. It's either the Cervarix or the Gardasil vaccine. It's for HPV, the HPV virus that supposedly causes cancer. The reality is that there are over 100 different strains of HPV, and the vaccines, either the Gardasil or the Cervarix vaccine, it only deals with a few of the different strains of HPV. It doesn't even touch 70 or 80 different strains. And the reality is that even on the package insert, it says that it could cause other cancers, secondary cancers. The reality is about HPV, and let's get this straight, that 95+% of women that have HPV, it resolves itself on its own. It just goes away. It doesn't cause cancer. And so what we're faced with is a situation where little girls basically are being vaccinated with the HPV vaccine that we know causes secondary cancers, just in case they have HPV. And if they did have HPV, if they were sick with that virus, 95+% of them, it would go away on its own. So again, now we're faced with a situation, what's the risk versus benefit analysis here? And to me, it just doesn't make any sense to inject a young lady with an HPV vaccine when most of them aren't even sick with the HPV virus, and 95% of them that would be sick would be resolved on its own. That makes no sense. And what makes even less sense is for them to inject boys with it now. And now they're starting to talk about injecting young men with this HPV virus to prevent cervical cancer.
They're now doing younger children, girls that are 8, 9, even babies. And where is the parents' right to choose in this equation? There are parents that say, we are training our children in a different way. So the question becomes, where in this equation is the parents' right to choose? The parents' right to raise the child as they see fit. We have a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, of course a 15-year-old, and there is, at this point in our family, not a need for, even if it was a clean vaccine effective, that particular vaccine. So there's so many variables in this whole thing, and there's an outrage in all these different areas about this particular vaccine.
Yeah, and the common thread basically is just tyranny. It's forcing a person, a family, a group of people even to do something that they don't want to do, and because a governmental agency or an alphabet agency says that this is best for that group, and it's just we're losing the freedom. And that's why I think what we're doing is so important. Is we're spreading not only the message of how to treat and prevent cancer, but we're also spreading the message that we have to stand up for our medical rights and for our health freedom rights.
Michael in Idaho asks, as a strong supporter of the scientific method and realizing even that can be abused, do you and the doctors have scientifically conducted test data to confirm your conclusions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that you brought that up, Michael, because when we're talking about the scientific method, oftentimes people that advocate natural treatments for cancer are thought of as less scientific than those that would prescribe chemo, radiation, or whatever. The fact of the matter is that in order for something to follow the scientific method, you've got a hypothesis, you have to test the hypothesis, and then you get a conclusion and see if that's a valid hypothesis. One of the things that's required in the scientific method is that it's got to be reproducible. And there was a study that came out just a couple years ago, only 11% of the conventional cancer research is reproducible. So even conventional cancer research isn't following the scientific method. And the reason that you can't reproduce is because we're dealing with individual people. And so different substances work different on different people. You can test it on a lab rat, but it doesn't necessarily work the same on a person. So even conventional treatments don't follow the scientific method. So in light of the fact that it's really impossible to use the scientific method on individual cancer patients because you can't reproduce the results, right? So by definition, it's not really following the scientific method. What we should be looking at is who's getting healed. And I can tell you from experience, the people that I've interviewed and the tens of thousands of people that are healed today because of natural treatments, they're getting quality of life, they're getting length of life, and they are being healed through these methods. I don't see the number of people being healed from the conventional treatments. And I really think what we should focus on is who's getting well. That's what matters. If you remember, Sayer G talked about the nocebo effect and the placebo effect. And Dr. Buttar said, why is the placebo effect poo-pooed when if we can heal somebody with just the power of the mind, we should get a Nobel Prize for healing somebody without hurting them. And so the bottom line is, what is the best result for the patient? Not, I don't believe in this treatment because it didn't follow the scientific method. None of the conventional treatments follow the scientific method either. Who's getting healed? And I think that's what we should focus on.
The next question comes in from Christina in Napier, New Zealand. New Zealand. We live there and have good friends. Hi, friends in New Zealand. Hi, Christina. The question is this: how do you control your anger when uncovering this information? I feel it in my solar plexus and I am full of rage, seething. You must have felt like this often in your quest for information. Have you or any of your colleagues been threatened during this process? Good question.
Yeah, we feel it in our solar plexus too. I like the way that you put that. I was filled with rage and anger for years after my father died. It's a maddening thing to realize that because of the fact that we're being lied to, people are dying. And people that you love are dying, and maybe you're dying, and maybe your daughter or your son are dying because we're being lied to about this. It does make you mad. And so I think that there's healthy anger. I think we should be angered about this. I think we should be enraged, and I think we should do something about it. And that's why we're doing this. That was what led us. That was the inception of the quest for the cures. It was 20 years ago when Dad died, and we just incrementally shared more and more information, and you know, over the last couple of years, it's really blown up to where we're reaching a much bigger audience now, and we're thankful for that. But it's because of that we do what we do. It's because of that rage that I had 20 years ago that I'm doing this now. It's because of the fact that Dad died and Mom died and all of my relatives died because they lacked knowledge, and this knowledge is being suppressed. And that's why our goal now is to spread this knowledge and to educate and to get it worldwide. And that's why we're so appreciative of you, of what you're doing when you support us, when you choose to own either the gold or the silver package, because you are helping us to get this message worldwide. You are becoming a part of this team and this mission that is just a fire within us to get this message to the masses. And so that's why we're so thankful for you, and that's why we appreciate it when you choose to own either the gold or silver package. And you can just click the link below to do that. And there's no risk to you. You full 90-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied with what you get. And what you can do is you can share this. I don't know if you noticed, if you saw the Quest for the Cures last year, it was good, but it wasn't finished out this way. It didn't have the B-roll and the music, and it wasn't just as professionally done. And the reason that we did that is because you can take these DVDs and you can buy them and hand them to somebody that doesn't know anything about this, and just the sheer professionalism of the way that we have finished this thing out, it lends credibility to the message. It doesn't look like it was filmed in your neighbor's basement, right? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but just its perception is reality a lot of times today. And with the Global Quest being done the way that we did it this year, this is information that can absolutely save people's lives, and it's presented in such a way that lends credibility to this message. And so that's why we just appreciate you so much.
Okay, the next question comes in from Ian from Bogota, Colombia.
Uh-huh.
I've just had a squamous cell carcinoma cut out of my scalp. Some surrounding tissue evidently still has cancer cells, and they want to cut more. Will putting frankincense on the wound help to heal it and kill what remains on the cancer in surrounding areas?
Yeah, great question, and yes, it will. Frankincense is great at healing cancer, as we learned from Dr. Axe and Dr. Zielinski in episode, I think, 2 it was, on the essential oils. As a matter of fact, Dr. Axe cured his own mother of cancer, and Alison Huish had brain cancer, and she used frankincense, but it also is a very potent wound healer. So yeah, great question, and yes, it will do both.
Okay, the next question comes in from Joanne from Argentina. She asks, what was the name of the well-spoken physician who spoke on essential oils and gave the recipe for the body lotion?
That's an easy question. I like the easy ones. That was Dr. Josh Axe, who had made a body lotion for his mother, made, I think he said, of shea butter, coconut butter, and then frankincense and myrrh. And he mixed it all together, and she rubs it on her body. Yeah.
And Ingrid in the Netherlands asks, if you can't trust your physician and even your own family wants you to follow standard procedure, what can you do?
That's a good question. What you need to do is you need to find a physician that you do trust. There are a lot of good doctors out there. And so I think you're coming from a position maybe where you don't trust your own physician. If you don't trust your own physician, you need to find somebody that you do trust. A lot of good doctors out there. You saw a lot of them in the Quest, in the Global Quest, and there's thousands more doctors out there that are trustworthy, that are going to be looking out for your best interest in mind, that are not the kind of doctor like we brought up with, that prescribes chemotherapy to people that don't even have cancer and is only in it for the money. Most doctors are good people. So just find a doctor that you do trust. That's really the key.
Marlo in Zurich, Switzerland asks, with close attention, I watched the first episode. I admire your energy to interview all those people. But, and forgive my rude question, how do we really know that your intentions are true? Who pays for all your travel? Why is a biomedical center so well presented with crying people? I am ready to believe what you're saying, but in this crazy world, this just popped into my mind watching it.
So how can you trust us? Well, I mean, hopefully it's evident that we are passionate about what we're doing. Hopefully it's evident that I love my parents and they're gone. And that's one of the inspiring factors for me that I've done what I've done over the last 20 years, and that Charlene's done what she's done, is our love for mom and dad. I mean, those were motivating factors for both of us. As far as, who pays for our travel, I think the question is like, are we being funded by like Big Pharma, or are we like a secret branch of Big Pharma? Because we've been accused of that. We've been accused of that recently. People said you are being funded by the same people that you preach against. Well, the reality is we don't have anybody that pays for it except us. We don't have corporate sponsors. We don't have big companies that are paying for our travels. Everything that we've paid for, or everything that we've done thus far with Truth About Cancer, we paid for it out of our own pocket. Us and our partners, we pay for it. So that's how we pay for the travels, is we spend our own money. And it wasn't cheap to travel the globe with a camera team of 3 men, plus myself. And we also sent people to other countries that we didn't make it to. That was not cheap. This whole process was a very expensive process, but we paid for all of it out of our own pockets because we love you, because we want you to have this knowledge, and we want the world to have this knowledge. So I hope that clears it up. We're not corporately sponsored. We're not funded by any nefarious group. We're funded by money that we've earned in the past. I've been a CPA for 20 years and I was director of taxation for a firm in Dallas and have been a professional for a long time. And so we've funded these travels these last couple of years with money that we've made in the past. And that's how we are getting this message to you. It's through our own efforts and our own money.
And our desire, truly from our hearts, has always been to just simply get you the information. We suffered so greatly with the loss of Ty's mother, his father, grandparents, all the family members, and it was so painful we can't even describe to you. But we redirected that pain into helping you, and we don't want you to have to suffer for just simply a lack of knowledge. And so it is our life mission to get these truths to the end of the earth and back again, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. And it did cost us money, but we're just so grateful that so many of you out there have joined us. We just want to thank you because we could not ever do what we're doing, and we're just reaching more and more people with every docuseries that you've partnered with us to make. So we just encourage everybody out there to click the button below, choose to own it for your family's sake, for your friends. Join us in this life-saving mission. Save lives. Join us and share these truths with your loved ones so that you don't have to suffer by losing your parents like we've had to suffer.
Yeah. Join the mission, support the movement. That's what we ask you.
The next question comes from Rita in Finland. What are the best brands of essential oils?
Lots of good brands of essential oils. The essential oil brand that we use is called Ameo, A-M-E-O. There's also doTERRA, there's Young Living, there's a lot of there's a lot of various types of essential oils that are all really high quality. So I would just recommend that you go out and you can do some research on any of those, and I would just recommend that you find one that you like and you begin using them because they're good. It reminds me of Sherry Calbone, the juice lady. If you remember, what's the best kind of juicer? It's the one that you use. What's the best essential oil? It's the one that you get into your house and then you use, whether it's internally or you rub it on your skin or whatever. It's the ones that you're using. So find an essential oil brand that you like and begin to incorporate them into your everyday health protocol.
Our next question comes in from Denise in Cleveland. Hi, Denise. She says, how do babies and children get cancer if it needs time to grow? Very good question, and there's a good answer coming. Would that just be genetics?
Well, some of it's genetics. About 5% of cancers are genetic, so it could be genetic. But the majority of babies that get cancer most likely are diagnosed because of their mother. Because the mother in the umbilical cord blood, they've done tests that show upwards of 280 chemicals in the blood getting to the baby through the umbilical cord, of which over 200 are carcinogenic. They cause cancer. So babies are getting cancer because they're being fed toxins through the umbilical cord from their mother, and the mother's toxic, and it's not the mother's fault a lot of times. I mean, you can't. There's only so much you can do with all of the toxicity that we're exposed to. But what we want to do is to take control of things that we do have control over, and one of the things we have control over is the food that we eat. So it's really important for pregnant mothers to be very careful about eating organic, non-GMO foods, staying away from the toxins, staying away from the body lotions and the deodorants and the antiperspirants and the things that are really toxic, because those toxic carcinogenic chemicals flow through the umbilical cord to the baby.
Exactly, and I just talked to a good friend of mine who's wanting to become pregnant and asked what could she do, and that's primary. Another thing, if you're not yet pregnant and you want to become pregnant, do a really good detox. Pull out those toxins and chelate the heavy metals, because metals are very dangerous for babies. So if you can do that before you get pregnant, you'll have a cleaner environment in which the baby can thrive and grow and develop, and your chances of having a sickly child, maybe even with cancer, would be very low in comparison to not doing those things.
Yeah.
The next question comes in from Ariana from Greece. She says, seeing how dangerous you say mammograms are, what is your take on colonoscopies? Are they a problem? Good question.
That's a very good question. Colonoscopies, I think, are extremely dangerous, but it's not just me that says that. There was a study that came out just a couple of years ago that showed that the increased mortality from colonoscopies was like 157% increased death, because of the fact that with a colonoscopy, you're sticking this fairly rigid tube up your colon, and there's many turns, and it's very difficult to get it through without perforating the colon. And if you perforate the colon, you got a whole world of hurt at that point, because you begin to leak waste into the bloodstream, and it can cause a ripple effect, a cascading effect of health problems from a colonoscopy. And in light of that fact, that's enough. But if that weren't enough, even the National Cancer Institute states on its own website that there's no evidence that shows that colonoscopies are good at early detection of colon cancer, that they increase survival one day. NCI even admits that. So a better option is a sigmoidoscopy. It's basically a partial colonoscopy, but it's done with a different instrument that's more flexible, and it doesn't go through all the turns in the colon. So there's a much less chance of perforation, and you can still find the polyps without having the damaging effects.
The next question comes in from Melina from Portugal. English is not my first language, so I would like to confirm the blood test that we can take to prevent cancer.
That's a great question. There are a lot of good tests to detect cancer, not really to prevent it, but to detect it. And so we're talking about the red drop test, the AMAS test, anti-malignant antibody and serum test. The Oncoblot test is another really good test. The Navarro urine test is not a blood test, but it also tests for cancer. One of the ladies that I interviewed for the Global Quest was Jenny Herbacek. She's a registered nurse, and she wrote a book called Cancer Free, Are You Sure? And in that book, she outlines dozens of different tests that you can use to determine cancer outside of the typical diagnostics like mammograms or PSA tests or whatever. These are more outside the box, let's just say, less harmful, less invasive, but superior from a diagnostic perspective.
The next question comes from Fiona from Northern Ireland. What essential oils should be used to prevent reoccurrence of primary breast cancer, and how should they be used?
If you remember in A Global Quest, we interviewed Dr. Eric Zelensky, and he mentioned the fact that to his knowledge, there's no essential oil that doesn't have some sort of an anti-cancer effect. So I mean, we heard a lot about frankincense and myrrh, so those are two good that have a lot of research shown that they have anti-cancer effects, specifically frankincense, a lot of research on frankincense. But I would recommend that you check out all the essential oils. There's dozens of different types of essential oils that you can look at and you can use. They smell differently. Some are used as fragrance. So, some people will rub them instead of cologne or perfume. They'll rub essential oils like peppermint or spearmint on. But they all have some sort of immunomodulating and anti-cancer effect.
And she asks, how would you use them?
So how might you use the essential oils? You can use them like with aromatherapy. You can rub them on your body. And certain ones you can actually put under your tongue and you can actually ingest without any harm. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use essential oils.
Well, the next question comes in from Marlene in Amsterdam, Netherlands. She asks, what does Dr. Fisher mean when he says 18% of cancers are caused by infection?
So what Dr. Fisher was referring to was a study that was done by the World Health Organization. It was published within the last couple of years that showed that 18% of cancers are caused by some sort of infection. So he was just quoting a study.
Okay, the next question comes in from Maria Luisa in Quezon City, Philippines. Is cancer hereditary, or is it predisposition to cause cancer?
Okay.
Are you predisposed, or is it hereditary?
I think what Maria Luisa is asking is cancer genetic, hereditary? Are you predisposed to get cancer? Because those are really the same things. And the answer is there's about 5% of cancer have a genetic link. We showed that. It's a screenshot that we showed from the American Cancer Society's website. And they admit that about 5% of cancers are genetic, and the other 95% are due to environmental factors. So you don't need to worry about your genetics. You do need to worry about epigenetics, though. So in other words, no matter what your genetics are, your choices, your lifestyle choices, override those genetic expressions in many cases. And so what you do need to be concerned with is making proper choices now, no matter what your genetic expression is, no matter what your genes say, no matter what your DNA is, your lifestyle choices can lead to a healthy life if you make healthy lifestyle choices.
The next question comes in from William in New Jersey. He asks, has anyone been cured with cancer caused by exposure to asbestos?
Mesothelioma, yeah. It's a great question, And if you remember last year, we interviewed Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who unfortunately has passed, but he had been working with Dr. William Donald Kelly, who was the doctor for Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen had mesothelioma. And Dr. Kelly actually was curing him using the metabolic protocol with enzymes and detoxification with the coffee enemas. And it was the surgery that actually killed Steve McQueen. So those of you that saw the quest for the cures last year, you saw that recount of the story from Dr. Gonzalez. So yeah, that's one person, but I know that Dr. Gonzalez had other patients, and I know Dr. Linda Isaacs now, they have treated successfully other patients with mesothelioma with this protocol at their clinic in New York City. And that's pretty much time for the day, isn't it? We don't have any more time for this question and answer session, but we've got more coming for you tomorrow. So we hope that you've enjoyed these questions and answers today with me and Charlene, and we've got a lot more for you tomorrow. This is only about half of the questions that we decided to answer. And all in all, we had thousands and thousands of questions. This is just a select group of questions that we didn't have time to answer all 10,000 or whatever questions. So we chose these because these were indicative and representative of the typical questions. But we have a lot more for you tomorrow. So thank you for tuning in today. Again, we couldn't do this without you. So if you haven't already chosen to own the gold or the silver package, please click the links below. Help us to join the movement and support this mission and to save lives across the world. We really thank you for tuning in today. We can't wait to see you again tomorrow.
We're looking forward to it. We'll see you there.
Thanks.